So, a lot of people are going to hear this and they're going to be a bit confused. What exactly happened? Did you lose your post?
Well, I'd been a national spokesperson for the best part of 10 years, even at that point in 2021, and I'd been reappointed through a proper selection process. And there was a backlash. The mob was set upon me on the day that we launched the spokespersons. Some people took exception. Some people then began what I would describe as a 6 months campaign to have me removed. And if you think of it like signing a contract for a job,
yes,
it's reasonably analogous, right, having an appointment. I felt like I had my contract redesigned and I was asked to sign a new one and then subjected to a, what shall we say, a retrospective probation process with the loss of my line manager in addition. That's how bad it was.
But this is very strange. A lot of people are going to be thinking, but you've been with the party for so long, you've worked for them tirelessly, and yet here they're getting rid of you because they don't agree with you on one particular point of view. Isn't the Green Party supposed to have an ethos of debate and discussion and disagreement? It
always has been. It's been a university of ideas, and I think that's best for politics. But now we've reached a situation where on the left of politics, I would say we are the most extreme example of authoritarianism. And of course, it was said at the last point that there was a objection to my views on trans rights.
What exactly had you said?
Well, it's never been put to me. That's the other astonishing thing. Going into a court of law, it's never been put to me what it is that I've said that's objectionable and which part of the Speaker's code of conduct I've breached.
It's just that I do follow you on Twitter, and you're not the sort who puts out objectionable, nasty comments. You're always very measured, always very kind. It seems weird.
Well, I'm careful, and as spokesperson for policing and domestic safety, I had an explicit brief to talk about justice.
Yes.
Spokespersons are supposed to be discussing topics of the day. So when we have a debate in the House of Lords, for example, about prisons policy, it's an issue. It's not something you can just brush under the carpet. If you've got male sex offenders who have been let into the female prison estate knowingly and they commit offence and rape, that's a concern. That's something I, as a good Green politician, need to be talking about, especially somebody who speaks on justice affairs.
And why would that be considered objectionable? Surely that's a view that we can all get behind. You know, it's not good that these things are going on.
Because it's deemed to be transphobic. We are now dealing with not just 1, 2, but 3 court cases in the pipeline. This will be the first of its kind to demonstrate. We've had the Forster ruling in 2021 that the so-called gender-critical belief, the common or garden belief that sex is immutable, which everybody believes, is a protected belief, worthy of respect in a democratic society. What I'm doing now, speaking truth to power, sadly having to do so within my own party, is that gender-critical belief, the idea that sex is immutable, is worthy of respect in a political party. And the reason is, politics is about legislation. It's about making robust legislation. And if we can't speak freely within the party, we are going to make bad legislation.
And it's not just the Greens, is it? This, of course, has torn the SNP apart. We've seen in the Labour Party the treatment of Rosie Duffield from party members, from fellow party members, has been pretty appalling on this issue. Why is it that there is a certain contingent of politician in today's society that cannot engage with this issue in an adult way, but instead says any point of disagreement must be evidence of hatred, phobia, or whatever you want to call it?
I think there is an element which has particularly afflicted left-leaning politics, of identitarian politics. The idea, for example, even when we marched against the Iraq war, some of us may have been saying, not in our name. We didn't say over our dead bodies. We threatened to bring the country to a standstill, but we didn't in fact. So the trouble is we're dealing with a veneer of politics, the appearance, not the substance of politics, one in which we can say, I'm not going to put up with you offending me, despite the fact that you have good cause to want to explore this debate where there is a conflict of rights of sorts or claims that needs to be negotiated. So it's identitarian politics, the idea that you're waving a flag and that this flag has supreme value.
Yeah, but if someone is raising the alarm about the threats to women's safety, you know, when it comes to women's safeguarding, when it comes to single-sex spaces and the necessity for them, and if that person who raises the alarm is dismissed as hateful, as transphobic, doesn't that, from the outside, look like the Greens don't care all that much about women's rights?
Well, what's extraordinary is that we are a party that defends and fights for the rights of all, discrimination against all. And I am not going to be silenced on matters as great as the refusal and the intimidation of women to be able to self-organise to discuss their concerns and their rights. And yet, not even advocating what it is should be the position, just to defend their right to self-organise. That's astonishing.
Yes. We've also got a tweet which we found online which has gone pretty far. This from a Green Party member talking about how, here it is, getting rid of transphobes from the Green Party is my priority, more than winning more MPs, more than winning more councillors or keeping the ones we have, more than literally anything else. The party needs to be a safe place for trans members. Now, there's a lot to unpack there, but the assumption being that people who are for women's rights are essentially transphobes, which is false. So that's the first thing that that tweet is saying. But also suggesting that this must prioritise absolutely anything else. Driving people out for wrongthink is more important than even environmental issues when it's called the Green Party.
Yeah, I mean, that is an appalling position to take, and I think I recognise that as a representative of the under-18 youth wing in the Green Party, and that got a lot of traction. So there was a lot of support for that public statement in our party. And what you have to consider is this, is that we are supposed to be an objective party. We cannot remain credible while asking people to come on board in terms of the climate emergency and the potential existential threat to us. You may not agree with that. You know, it's a matter of time. We can disagree about how long we've got. But to argue objectively, according to the science, according to the carbon output, and then to say at the same time there is no such thing as women's rights and sex-based rights. Well,
that doesn't make sense, does it?
A little unnoticed fact is that our policy is itself gender critical. We talk about, in our health section, we talk about single-sex wards for women in hospitals in order to protect their dignity. We also talk about the fact that no child should leave school without understanding the basic medical realities of reproduction. So we are actually a gender-critical party.
Yes.
My mistake is that I have been promulgating, as somebody who's written a couple of books in green politics, as somebody who's done the circuit, who's been a deputy leader and elected into that position. I'm somebody who I believe knows the party's policy inside out and am unprepared to compromise green values, policies and ethos for the sake of this bullying faction in the party, which is frankly taking it over.
And how does it feel on a personal level? Because, you know, you've put so much into this party, and to have certain members of it turn against you in this way, so that it has to go to court, it must take a personal toll.
It is horrific, actually. It takes a deep personal toll. I have to say I couldn't have survived it were it not for the brilliant people across all spectrums of politics, in the public arena, not just on social media, but also in my own party. It's friends, not only friends who have stuck with you. I think one of the best lessons of all this is knowing who your true friends are, and I think that is a lesson worth knowing. But also friends who you didn't know you had, who had your back. There's a lot which will come out in disclosure when we go to court, which I won't indulge now. But I think it has been very costly, emotionally, mentally, physically, and of course, monetarily.
Yes.
But I think one can only do this if one believes in the cause and the fight, not just for the sake of democratic politics, because if you can't have free speech, legislation suffers. You will have, you know, there is no way I could not but speak out for the rights and the well-being of children going through a clinic with experimental drugs, facing several years down the line, regret, pain, lifelong torment, because they had not had proper medical due diligence.
Yes.
If that isn't a green issue, I don't know what is.
And finally, Shahrar, if you could just explain, you know, you've got a crowdfunder up to help with your costs, because it is very expensive. This
it is, yeah.
How can people support you on this?
You can search Shahrar Ali, Crowd Justice. The title is Worthy of Respect in a Political Party, because that's the aim of this case, is to say not only must we defend the rights of people to be able to speak freely on sex in public, but especially in political parties. We must not tolerate, actually, representatives of political parties being subdued, harassed in those political parties, because then policy, public policy and rights of all will suffer.
Shahrar Ali, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.